The rain fell hard that night, loud and cold. Covering the empty road in silver mist, Ethan drove his old truck slowly, wipers moving fast but still losing the fight against the storm. The sound of thunder rolled through the dark hills, and flashes of lightning painted the sky white for a moment. He had been working late in his small repair shop, fixing broken machines for farmers in the nearby town. All he wanted now was to reach home, drink something warm and sleep. But fate had other plans for him. As his truck turned around a sharp bend, something caught his eyes. In the middle of the road, half covered in rainwater, a shape was lying still. At first, he thought it was a lost animal, maybe a dog or a deer. But when he stopped and stepped out into the rain, his heart froze. It was a girl, a young woman, lying face down on the wet ground. He rushed to her side, his boots sinking in the mud. Her clothes were torn, her hair soaked and tangled. She was breathing but weakly. When he turned her gently, he saw her face, soft, pale, almost shining under the lightning. Something about her skin looked strange. It wasn't just pale, it had a faint glow, like light trapped beneath the surface. "Hey, can you hear me?" Ethan asked. His voice trembled a little. The girl didn't answer. She was cold to the touch. Her lips slightly blue. He looked around. There were no cars, no houses, nothing but rain and thunder. He had no choice but to help her. He lifted her in his arms and carried her to his truck. She was lighter than he expected, almost weightless. Her strange skin shimmered faintly in the dim light. He placed her on the seat, started the engine, and drove toward his workshop. The wipers struggled against the heavy rain as Ethan kept glancing at her face. Something deep inside him said this was not an ordinary person. When he reached his workshop, he quickly unlocked the door and carried her inside. The air smelled of oil and metal. He laid her gently on a workbench and grabbed a blanket. The girl looked fragile, almost too fragile for this world. Her skin was smooth, but now that he could see her closely, he noticed something even stranger. Tiny glowing lines ran along her neck and shoulders like thin veins of light under the skin. Ethan stared in disbelief. "What in the world?" he whispered. He cleaned a small cut on her arm, and to his shock, her blood wasn't red. It glowed faint blue. It pulsed slowly, matching the faint rhythm of her breathing. Ethan stepped back, unsure what to do, fear mixed with curiosity. What was she? A victim of some experiment? Someone from another place? The storm outside grew louder. The sound of wind pressed against the old workshop doors. Ethan sat beside her, listening to the rain. He tried to think. Should he call the police? The hospital? But how could he explain what he had found? They would think he was crazy after a while. The girl's eyes opened slowly. They were the color of the ocean after a storm, deep and strange. She looked scared, confused, and tried to sit up. Ethan raised his hand gently. "Easy, it's okay. You're safe," he said softly. She tried to speak, but the words came out in a language he didn't know, musical and broken. He shook his head. "I don't understand you," he said. Her gaze shifted to the rain outside, as if searching for something in the distance. Then suddenly all the lights in the workshop flickered. The radio on his work table turned on by itself. Static filled the air. Ethan turned toward it, confused. The girl's skin glowed brighter, the lines on her neck now pulsing with soft light. From the radio, a strange sound began to play, not a voice, but a pattern, a rhythm like coded beeps. Then for a brief second, a voice came through the static, low and distorted. "She's not alone. They are coming." Ethan froze. His heart pounded in his chest. He looked at the girl, her glowing skin now dimming again. Her eyes met his, full of fear. She whispered something softly. And though he couldn't understand the words, the meaning was clear. Danger outside, the thunder grew louder, and lightning flashed again. For a brief moment, Ethan thought he saw something moving in the sky. A shadow, dark and silent, drifting above the clouds. He took a deep breath, looking down at the mysterious girl lying on his workbench. He had no idea who she was, where she came from, or what those glowing lines on her skin meant. But deep down he knew one thing for certain. His life would never be the same again. "You said the storm raged through the night, lightning tearing the sky apart inside the workshop." Ethan sat close to the mysterious girl, watching the soft rise and fall of her breathing. The faint blue light under her skin pulsed gently, casting ghostly shadows on the metal walls. He still couldn't believe what he was seeing. It felt like a dream or a nightmare he couldn't wake from. He stood up and looked at the flickering radio on his workbench. The voice he had heard, "She's not alone. They are coming," still echoed in his mind. He tried to tune it again, but all he got was static for a few seconds. The light bulbs flickered, then stabilized. The storm outside began to calm, replaced by a deep, heavy silence. Ethan turned back to the girl. She looked peaceful now, but too still, too quiet. He placed another blanket over her shoulders and noticed something strange. The glowing lines on her neck were shifting slowly, like liquid light. They formed symbols he had never seen before, moving, changing, rearranging. It was almost as if her body was sending a message. He grabbed his old digital recorder and pressed record. Pointing it toward her, he didn't know why, but he felt this was something important. Suddenly, a faint hum filled the room, not coming from the radio this time, but from her. It was low at first, then grew louder, resonating through the metal floor. Ethan stepped back, his heart racing. The lights began to dim, and the radio sparked again. This time, the static changed into strange rhythmic pulses, long and short bursts. Repeating in patterns, Ethan's eyes widened. He realized it wasn't noise, it was a signal. He quickly grabbed his notebook and began jotting down what he heard. Each sequence repeated 3 times before changing. The patterns were too precise to be random. It reminded him of something he'd seen once on a science channel, Morse code, but not in any known language. He looked at the girl again. The lines on her skin now glowed in sync with the sounds. Her heartbeat matched the rhythm perfectly, as if her body and the signal were connected, working together like a living machine. Ethan whispered under his breath, "Who are you?" The girl stirred slightly, her head turning. Her eyes opened again, and this time they glowed faintly blue. She looked at him and spoke softly, her voice shaky but clear. "Lyra." Ethan blinked. "Lyra?" he repeated. She nodded slowly, placing a hand on her chest. "Lyra, a name." Her English was broken, her accent strange but beautiful. He knelt beside her. "Lyra, what's happening? What's this sound? What's wrong with your skin?" he asked gently. She looked confused, searching for words. Her fingers traced the glowing lines on her arm. "Not wrong. Signal. Hide." They find. Ethan frowned. "Who's coming?" he asked. Lyra's eyes widened with fear. She looked toward the rain-streaked window and whispered, "Hunters," before he could ask more. The power suddenly went out. The workshop plunged into darkness, only her glowing skin illuminating the room. The radio let out a sharp crackle. Then silence. Ethan grabbed a flashlight, but its beam flickered weakly. The air felt heavy, charged with static. Lyra's breathing quickened. She pressed her palm against her neck, and the glowing pattern changed again. This time, a small holographic image appeared above her hand, a floating map of blue light showing the surrounding area. At the edge of the hologram, several red dots were moving toward the center. Their location, Ethan's voice trembled. "They're tracking you?" She nodded. "Signal, trace? Must stop." He didn't know what to do. He had no weapons, no way to hide from whatever was out there. "How far?" he asked. Lyra's voice was low. "Close." He rushed to the back door and peeked outside. The rain had slowed, but fog covered everything. The sound of distant engines echoed faintly through the night. Not cars and something else. When he returned, Lyra was standing weakly. Her eyes glowing brighter now, she touched his arm. "You help me," she said. Ethan nodded without hesitation. "Tell me what to do." She pointed to the radio. "Destroy it. They follow signal." He hesitated. "But it might be our only way to communicate." Her tone grew urgent. "No time. They come." He smashed the radio with a wrench. Sparks flew. The humming sound in the air began to fade. Lyra let out a deep breath, her glow dimming again. Ethan could tell she was in pain. She collapsed, and he caught her before she hit the ground. He laid her back down gently, her skin now dull, the glowing lines fading slowly. He sat beside her, drenched in sweat, listening to the silence outside. But the silence didn't last long. A faint metallic sound came from the distance, like something cutting through the air. Ethan looked out the small window and froze. Through the mist, he saw lights moving between the trees, not flashlights, but beams of pale blue energy sweeping the area. "Searching," he whispered. "They're here." Lyra opened her eyes slightly, weak but alert. Hide, she murmured. Ethan turned off the flashlight and dragged a metal cabinet across the door. His mind raced. He had no idea who these hunters were, or why they wanted her. But he knew one thing. He couldn't let them find her. The workshop filled with faint vibrations as if something large hovered above. Ethan looked up and saw dust falling from the ceiling. A low humming sound grew louder. Outside, a shadow passed over the workshop, massive and silent. The air pressure changed, and for a brief second, the glowing lines on Lyra's skin flickered again. Ethan held his breath, clutching a wrench tightly. Lightning flashed outside, and through the window, he saw 3 tall figures moving in the fog, armored, mechanical, and glowing with the same blue light as Lyra's blood. One of them turned its head slowly toward the workshop. The blue glow in its eyes brightened, and a distorted voice echoed through the rain. Target located. Ethan's heart pounded. He looked down at Lyra, her eyes wide with fear, and whispered, "We need to run." But before he could move, the door began to shake, and the metallic sound of claws scraping against it filled the air. The hunters had found them, and the night was only beginning. The metal door rattled violently as the hunters slammed against it. Their mechanical voices echoed through the rain, sharp and cold. Ethan's hands shook as he searched for anything to block the entrance. He pulled a heavy workbench toward the door, his boots slipping on the wet floor. Lyra stood weakly, her eyes glowing brighter now. "Hide," she whispered again. But Ethan shook his head. "No, I'm not leaving you," he said. His voice was calm, but inside, fear gripped him like ice. He could see shadows moving outside, tall figures with glowing armor and strange smooth helmets. Each step they took made the ground hum. The banging stopped for a moment, replaced by a low humming sound. Then, a thin blue light began to cut across the metal door, melting it. Ethan grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her toward the back of the workshop. "Come on, this way," he said. She stumbled, still weak. Her glowing skin pulsed faster, as if her body was reacting to the presence of the hunters. They slipped into a storage room behind the workshop. Ethan quietly shut the door. The walls vibrated as something heavy crashed through the front. The sound of metal bending filled the air, and then the hunters' cold voices echoed inside. "Scan initiated," one of them said. The room lit up, with flashes of blue light shining through the cracks in the walls. Ethan crouched beside Lyra, his breath shallow. He could hear the whirring of their scanners. Suddenly, Lyra pressed her palm to the floor. A soft glow spread beneath her hand, forming a faint blue circle. "What are you doing?" Ethan whispered. She didn't answer. Instead, symbols appeared inside the glowing circle, spinning like a projection. Her skin brightened, casting soft light around them. The walls shook again. One of the hunters was getting closer. Ethan held his breath, clutching a wrench like a weapon. Then, the light under Lyra's hand expanded, forming a bright flash that filled the room. For a moment, everything went silent. The next sound Ethan heard was not the hunters, but a voice, soft, distant, and echoing inside his mind, human. "Protect the key." He looked around, confused. The words weren't spoken aloud. They came from the light itself. The glowing symbols floated around them like stars, forming a pattern, a map. It showed the earth, surrounded by strange lines and dots. Some were blinking red, others green. Ethan's eyes widened. "What is this?" he whispered. Lyra's breathing was fast, her voice trembling. "My people. They send this warning." She pointed at the red dots. "Hunters destroy cities." Ethan couldn't believe what he was seeing. "Cities? You mean they're planning to attack?" She nodded weakly. "They come from Sky. They want the code." "Me." Outside, the hunters' voices grew louder. "Energy source detected," one of them said. The sound of metal footsteps moved closer to their hiding spot. Lyra grabbed Ethan's wrist. "We must go," she said. "The light, it call them." Ethan looked at her, realizing that the holographic message was sending out some kind of signal. The same one the hunters were tracking. He quickly pulled open a small hatch at the back of the room. "There's an old tunnel here used to drain water," he said. She nodded, and together they crawled into the dark space. Behind them, the storage room door was torn open with a scream of metal. The hunters entered, scanning the room, but the two were already gone. The tunnel was damp and cold, their hands splashing through shallow water as they crawled. The faint glow from Lyra's skin lit the path. "Why are they after you?" Ethan asked quietly. She hesitated, then whispered, "Because I carry message. Key to stop them." Ethan frowned. "Stop them? You mean the hunters?" She shook her head. "Bigger. War. They start again." Her voice was soft, full of sorrow. "My kind. We once lived on Earth. Long ago." Ethan stopped crawling, staring at her in shock. "Your kind lived here?" She nodded slowly. "Before humans grow strong, before cities rise. We protect this world. Then we leave." She looked at him sadly. "Now they come back? Not to protect, but to rule." Lightning flashed through a crack in the tunnel ceiling, and for a moment, Ethan saw her face clearly, calm but full of pain. He realized she wasn't lying. Every word felt heavy and true. They reached the end of the tunnel, opening into the forest. The rain had slowed, replaced by thick fog. Ethan helped Lyra out, and they both collapsed against a tree, catching their breath. Behind them, far in the distance, a blue light shot into the sky. The hunters had found the projection. Ethan could see their silhouettes moving in the mist. "Searching, scanning, relentless. We can't go back," Ethan said. "They'll find us again." Lyra nodded weakly. "We find safe place. Need help." Ethan looked around, trying to think. The old radio tower on the hill. It was miles away, but if he could reach it, maybe he could send a warning. "Come on," he said, helping her stand. "We're not giving up." They started moving through the fog, their footsteps silent. Lyra leaned on him for support. Her skin flickered faintly with each step. "Your world. In danger," she said softly. "You must see the rest." Before Ethan could ask what she meant, her hand glowed again, projecting a faint image, a fleet of enormous ships, dark and spiked, floating above Earth's orbit. His chest tightened. "They're already here," he whispered. Lyra's voice broke. "Soon they come for you all." A cold wind blew through the forest, carrying the faint hum of engines above. Ethan looked up at the sky, barely visible through the fog, and saw a dark shape moving slowly, silent and massive. He swallowed hard. "Then we'd better move fast." They disappeared into the shadows of the forest, unaware that a small drone, hidden in the branches above, had locked onto their heat signatures. A red light blinked once, then vanished into the dark. And high above the clouds, the hunter's ship changed course, heading straight for them. The forest was silent except for the dripping of rain from the trees. The fog curled between the trunks like ghostly smoke, hiding shadows that seemed to move on their own. Ethan held Lyra's hand as they walked, his heart pounding with every step. He could still see the glow from the hunter's search beams far behind them, cutting through the mist like blades. "Keep moving," he whispered. His voice was low, but his eyes kept scanning the dark woods. Lyra stumbled once, and he caught her. Her skin glowed faintly beneath her torn clothes, every pulse of light giving away their position. Ethan grabbed a small blanket from his backpack and wrapped it around her, trying to dim the glow. "They follow light," she said weakly. "My body. It call them." Ethan frowned. "Then we'll make sure they don't find you." He glanced upward and noticed something moving between the clouds. Faint lights, circling like vultures. The hunters were not just on foot. They had eyes in the sky. They followed a narrow trail that led to an abandoned cabin deep in the forest. Ethan had seen it before when hunting years ago. The roof was half collapsed, and the wooden boards were rotting, but it was shelter. He pushed the door open, the hinges groaning, dust and cobwebs filled the air. "Stay here," he said. "Rest. I'll check outside." Lyra nodded, sitting down on the floor. Her skin's glow had faded to a soft shimmer. She looked exhausted, her breathing uneven. Ethan stepped out again, scanning the area with a flashlight. The fog was so thick it swallowed the light almost immediately. He could barely see 5 feet ahead, then he heard it. A faint whirring sound. High-pitched and mechanical, he turned off the flashlight instantly. The sound came closer, passing above the trees. Through the mist, he caught sight of a small drone, black, sleek, with blue lights pulsing beneath its wings. He crouched low and watched it hover for a moment, scanning the ground, then it turned and drifted away silently. Heading back toward the main road, Ethan exhaled slowly, realizing how close it had been. When he returned to the cabin, Lyra was sitting near the window. Staring at the rain, her eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the gray light. "They do not stop," she whispered. Ethan knelt beside her. "Who are they? Why do they want you so badly?" She looked down at her hands. "Hunters. Not like me," she said softly. "They were made by my people, long ago, to find energy, to fight wars. But they changed." "Changed how?" Ethan asked. She looked at him sadly. "They think they are gods now. They destroy all who hide the code." "The code," Ethan repeated. "You mean the symbols on your skin?" She nodded slowly. "Yes. My body holds the key. It can stop them. Or awaken them all." Before Ethan could respond, a low rumble shook the ground beneath them. He rushed to the window. Lights flashed in the distance. 3 tall shapes emerging from the fog, moving fast. "They found us," he said, his voice tense. Lyra stood, trembling but determined. "We run." They darted out the back door into the forest again. The hunters' beams cut through the mist. Sweeping across the trees, Ethan and Lyra ran as fast as they could, branches scratching their arms, mud splashing under their feet. The forest was alive with sound now. The hum of engines, the thud of mechanical feet. One beam passed dangerously close to them, burning a hole through a nearby tree. Ethan ducked behind a log, pulling Lyra down with him. "They're too close," he whispered. She pressed her hand to his chest, her glow pulsing faster. "Trust me," she said softly. Before he could ask what she meant, she touched the ground, and the earth beneath them shifted slightly. The air shimmered, and then suddenly, the light around them bent. The forest looked the same, but their bodies were now surrounded by a faint distortion, like heat waves in the air. Ethan stared in awe. "What did you just do?" Lyra looked weak but managed a small smile. "Hide us, only for short time." The hunters passed nearby, their glowing eyes scanning the trees. One of them stopped just meters away, turning its head slowly. Its metallic voice echoed through the mist. "Life signs detected. Recalibrating." Ethan held his breath, his hand tightened on the wrench in his pocket, ready to fight even though he knew it was useless. The hunter's glowing eyes flickered, then turned away. It moved forward. Following another trail, Lyra released the illusion. Collapsing against him, he caught her. "You're burning up," he said. She shook her head weakly. "Too much power. Can't use again soon." Ethan looked around desperately. They couldn't keep running like this. He needed a plan. That's when he saw something. An old watchtower far up the hill, barely visible through the trees. "There," he said, pointing. "If we can reach that, we'll have the high ground." They started climbing the hill, the wind howling through the forest. Every step felt heavier. Lyra's strength was fading fast. Ethan half carried her until they reached the base of the tower. It was rusted but still standing. He helped her climb the narrow stairs to the top. From there he could see the forest stretching endlessly, but also, far away, the glow of something massive in the sky. A ship, enormous and silent, hovering above the clouds. Its underside pulsed with the same blue light as the hunters. Lyra looked up weakly. "That's their nest," she whispered. "The command." Ethan clenched his fists. "So they're not just after you. They're scanning the entire area." She nodded. "They know I'm alive, and they will not stop until I'm gone." He stared at the ship, realizing how small they were against such power. Still, he couldn't let fear win. "Then we make them stop," he said. Lyra met his eyes. "You fight for me?" she asked quietly. He smiled slightly. "No," he said. "I fight for both of us." The wind howled louder, and from below the forest began to glow blue again. Dozens of hunter drones were rising through the trees. Surrounding the tower, Ethan looked at Lyra, his mind racing. "We're out of time," he said. Lyra pressed her hand to his, her skin warm against his cold fingers. "Then it's time you see what I really am," she whispered. Her body began to glow brighter than ever before, light spreading from her heart to her fingertips. The entire tower vibrated as the air filled with energy. Ethan could only watch in stunned silence as the sky lit up around them. And far above, the alien ship stopped moving, as if it had just felt her awakening. "You said." The night sky turned white as Lyra's body glowed brighter. The air crackled with strange energy. Lightning crawling across the clouds like veins of light. Ethan shielded his eyes, the force of the pulse knocking him back against the rail. The old tower groaned under the pressure. Dust raining down from above, Lyra floated slightly above the floor, her feet no longer touching the wooden planks. Strange symbols appeared across her skin, glowing in patterns that seemed alive. Her eyes turned pure silver, and her voice echoed with two tones at once, human and something far beyond. "They have awakened the signal," she said. "The hunters, they come to erase the key." Ethan stared at her, breathless. "Lyra, what's happening to you?" She looked at him, her glowing eyes softening for a moment. "I remember now who I am." Outside, the forest was alive with movement. Dozens of drones floated through the mist, their light scanning the ground. Mechanical footsteps thundered below the tower as hunter units emerged from the darkness. Their voices were metallic, cold, repeating the same command. "Retrieve the core. Terminate the human." Ethan's stomach twisted. "They know I'm with you," he said. Lyra nodded slowly. "You helped me. You are now part of the signal." Suddenly, one of the drones shot a beam at the tower. The wood burst into flames, sparks flying everywhere. Ethan grabbed Lyra's arm. "We have to move. Now!" They rushed down the narrow stairs as fire licked the walls. The whole tower shook violently as another beam hit its base. Ethan nearly fell, catching the railing just in time. He could hear the hunters below, climbing fast when they reached the bottom. Lyra raised her hand. The air shimmered again. This time, the ground itself moved, twisting open like a living thing. A hidden passage revealed itself beneath the earth, glowing faintly with blue light. "Go," she said. "This way." Ethan didn't hesitate. He jumped down into the tunnel, the air damp and cold. Lyra followed, sealing the entrance behind them. Above, the tower collapsed in a burst of fire. The hunters scanned the rubble, but their sensors found nothing. The tunnel stretched deep beneath the forest, its walls smooth like glass. The faint light reflected on Lyra's skin, making her seem even more otherworldly. Ethan ran his hand along the wall. "What is this place?" Lyra's voice was soft. "Old paths. Built before my world fell." "You mean there's more like you?" he asked. She shook her head. "There were, long ago, but I am the last." The tunnel eventually opened into a vast underground chamber. It was filled with strange technology, silver pillars, floating crystals, and a glowing sphere in the center. The sphere pulsed with the same energy that radiated from Lyra. Ethan's eyes widened. "What is that?" "My memory," she whispered. "Everything that was lost." She stepped toward the sphere, and the symbols on her skin started to align with the patterns on its surface. The chamber trembled as the energy responded to her presence. Ethan took a cautious step back, watching in awe. As Lyra placed her hand on the sphere, light burst outward, projecting images into the air, towering cities made of light, alien ships gliding across oceans of stars, and then destruction. Massive explosions, dark machines rising, and blue fire consuming entire worlds. Ethan felt his heart sink. "That's your home," he said quietly. Lyra nodded, her voice breaking. "It was until the hunters rebelled. They wanted freedom from the creators, but they destroyed everything." Ethan clenched his fists. "And now they're here, doing the same thing." She turned toward him, her eyes glowing brighter. "Yes, but it can end. The code in me can shut them down forever. But it'll kill you, won't it?" he said. She hesitated, the silence answering for her. Before either of them could say more, the ground above them trembled again. Dust fell from the ceiling, and faint blue lights began appearing through the walls. The hunters were scanning the underground system. "They found us," Ethan said, grabbing his pack. Lyra looked at him with calm determination. "No. This time they will find their end." She walked toward the sphere and pressed her palms flat against it. Energy surged through the room, the crystals floating higher as the air grew hot. Ethan could feel the vibrations through his bones. "What are you doing?" he shouted. "Waking the core," she said. "It will call the old guardians, those who once protected life." The light became blinding, and a sound filled the air, a deep hum, ancient and powerful. It felt alive. like a heartbeat echoing through the earth. Then from the shadows of the chamber walls, shapes began to form, tall figures made of light and metal, their eyes glowing like stars. They looked both mechanical and alive. Ethan stepped back astonished. "Are those your people?" Lyra nodded. "What remains of them?" One of the guardians turned its head toward her, its voice deep and echoing. "Child of the lost code, you have returned." Lyra lowered her head. "I seek to end the cycle." The guardian looked toward the ceiling, where distant explosions rumbled. "Then the war will come here." Lyra turned to Ethan, her expression filled with both fear and hope. "If I fail, they will destroy this world too." Ethan took a deep breath, his voice steady. "Then we don't let you fail," she smiled faintly, her light flickering like a fading flame. "Then we fight together." Above them, the earth shook harder as the hunters began to break through. Blue light cut through the darkness like blades. The guardians raised their weapons, glowing staffs humming with power. The war that destroyed her world was about to begin again. Only this time, on Earth, and Ethan, an ordinary human, now stood beside the last hope of two worlds. The first hunter dropped through the ceiling. Landing with a thunderous crash, its voice echoed cold and final. "Eliminate the anomaly." Ethan clenched his fists and looked at Lyra. "Let's finish this," he said. She nodded, light blazing from her eyes. "For your world," she whispered, "and for mine," and then the battle began. The underground chamber erupted in chaos, blinding light flashing against cold metal walls. Ethan ducked as energy blasts ripped through the air, sending chunks of debris flying. The guardians moved like lightning, their weapons humming with raw power, every strike shaking the ground. Lyra stood at the center of it all, her body glowing brighter than ever before, the energy around her pulsing like a living storm. The first wave of hunters dropped through the hole above, their metallic armor reflecting the flickering light. They moved with machine precision, scanning targets, firing plasma bolts with deadly accuracy. One of the guardians blocked a blast with its staff. Spinning and slamming it into the ground, a shockwave tore through the floor, throwing several hunters back, but more were already coming. Ethan grabbed a broken metal rod and ducked behind a pillar. His heart raced. He was no soldier, but he couldn't just stand by. When one of the drones flew too close, he swung hard, smashing it out of the air. Sparks exploded as it crashed beside him. "Guess I'm part of the fight now," he muttered under his breath. Lyra raised her hand, summoning streams of light that struck the hunters. Her power seemed endless, yet every blast made her stumble slightly. The glowing patterns on her skin began to fade, and Ethan noticed how pale she was becoming. "Lyra!" he shouted over the noise. "You can't keep doing this." She looked at him, eyes burning with determination. "If I stop, they win." Suddenly, the largest hunter dropped through the ceiling, a towering figure, twice the size of the others. Its armor gleamed black with streaks of blue light, and its voice was deep and thunderous. "Core detected. Capture protocol initiated." It raised its arm and fired a beam that shattered a guardian in one hit. The glowing fragments scattered across the floor like shattered stars. The other guardians roared in unison, charging at the giant, but it was faster than it looked. With a single swing of its arm, it sent two more crashing into the walls. Ethan ran toward Lyra, pulling her behind a fallen pillar. "That thing will tear everything apart," he said. She placed her hand on his chest, her touch trembling. "It's their commander, the first of the hunter line." "Then we stop it," Ethan said, even though fear clawed at his stomach. She nodded slowly, but not with strength. With code. Before Ethan could ask what she meant, she closed her eyes. Her body began to glow again, brighter than before. The air around them shimmered and the chamber lights flickered. The giant hunter turned its head toward her. "Code signature identified," it said. "Engaging override," but Lyra's voice rang out, echoing across the chamber. "Override denied." The hunter froze, its lights flickering, then suddenly it roared. The sound deafening. "Infection detected." "Eliminating threat." Lyra gasped, pain shooting through her body. Her glow dimmed violently. Ethan caught her before she fell. "Lyra, what's happening?" She struggled to speak. "He's inside, trying to rewrite me." The giant hunter stepped closer, its chest plate opening to reveal a glowing core of swirling energy. The same symbols that covered Lyra's skin now appeared on its metal body, twisting and changing. Ethan's eyes widened. It was stealing her code without thinking. Ethan grabbed one of the fallen guardian's staffs. It felt warm and alive somehow. He aimed it at the hunter. The weapon reacted instantly, energy surging through it. "Come on, work," he muttered. The staff released a blinding pulse that struck the hunter square in the chest. The creature staggered backward, smoke pouring from its armor. Ethan felt the power burning through his arms, but he didn't stop. He fired again, shouting, "Stay away from her." The blast tore through the hunter's chest, revealing the glowing core inside for a moment. It looked stunned. Then it lunged forward, grabbing Ethan with one massive hand. "Human interference and unacceptable," it growled. Ethan struggled, the metal grip crushing his ribs. "You'll have to deal with it," he gasped. Lyra's eyes snapped open. She saw him in the hunter's grasp and screamed. Her entire body erupted in light, filling the chamber with blinding brilliance. "Let him go," she shouted. The hunter turned toward her, but before it could react, she unleashed a surge of pure energy. It struck the creature with such force that its armor cracked open. The glowing symbols across its body flared red, then shattered. The hunter fell to its knees. Its grip loosening, Ethan dropped to the floor. Gasping for breath, Lyra stood trembling, her light flickering like a candle in the wind. The giant machine lifted its head one last time, its voice distorted. "You cannot stop the network." Then it collapsed, motionless. The chamber went silent except for the hum of energy around the sphere. The Guardian stood still, watching Lyra as she fell to her knees. Ethan crawled to her side. Hey, stay with me," he said, his voice breaking. She smiled weakly. "We won?" "Yeah," Ethan said, looking around at the wreckage. "But at what cost?" Lyra reached out, her fingers brushing his cheek. "The connection isn't broken." "Not yet," Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" "The network. It's calling more," she whispered. "They know the commander is gone, and they'll come for me." Ethan looked up toward the ceiling. Faint vibrations echoed from above. The sound of engines, multiple ones growing louder. "They're sending ships," he said. Lyra nodded slowly. "Yes, the war isn't over. It's only beginning." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we fight again." She looked at him with soft, glowing eyes. "You would fight for a world not your own?" He smiled faintly. "It's my world now, because you're in it." Her eyes shimmered with emotion. "Then we'll face them together." Suddenly, the glowing sphere in the center of the chamber pulsed violently. The Guardians turned toward it, their voices echoing in unison. "Incoming transmission. Global resonance detected." Lyra looked at Ethan, her face pale. "They're not just coming for me," she whispered. "They're coming for Earth." Ethan stared at the sphere as the blue light expanded, filling the room. The image of hundreds of hunter ships appeared above them. Descending through the clouds, Lyra took a deep breath. "Then we awaken the last defense." "What defense?" Ethan asked. She looked at the Guardians, her voice steady now. "The code that built the hunters can also unmake them." As the light consumed the chamber, Ethan realized that the battle for survival had just begun. Not for one species, but for both, and in that moment, as the world above trembled under the approach of alien warships, the fate of two civilizations rested in the hands of one human and one dying alien girl, you said. The earth rumbled as alien ships pierced the clouds. Their massive shadows blotted out the moonlight, and the forest above the underground chamber trembled under their weight. The ground cracked, dust falling from the ceiling like rain. Ethan and Lyra looked up, both knowing there was no turning back. The Guardians formed a circle around the glowing sphere, their bodies humming with power. The air was hot, alive with static energy. "They're here," Ethan said quietly. Lyra nodded, her voice weak but steady. "Yes. The fleet has come for me. For the code." Ethan clenched his fists. "Then we'll give them more than they expect." Lyra smiled faintly. "You speak like a warrior now." Before he could reply, the ceiling exploded in a roar of blue fire. A massive hunter ship hovered above the crater it created. Its engines shaking the air, beams of light shot downward, and metallic figures descended. Dozens of hunters, their armor glistening like liquid steel. Their leader, taller than all the rest, landed with a heavy thud, its glowing eyes fixed on Lyra. "Primary target located," it said, its voice cold and unfeeling. "Termination sequence activated." Ethan stepped in front of her instinctively. "You'll have to go through me first." The hunter tilted its head slightly. "Accepted." It raised its arm, And before Ethan could move, a bolt of energy shot toward him, but one of the Guardians stepped in front of him. Taking the full hit, the blast shattered the Guardian's body. Scattering fragments of light across the floor, Ethan staggered back, shocked. "They're dying for us." Lyra's eyes shimmered. "They are bound to protect the code, until the end." The battle erupted instantly. Energy beams crisscrossed the chamber, explosions lighting up the walls. The Guardians fought like ancient gods, their weapons slicing through Hunter armor. But for every machine they destroyed, 2 more dropped through the hole above. Ethan grabbed one of the fallen Guardian's blades. It was heavy and hot to the touch, but it hummed with strange energy. He swung it at a nearby drone, cutting it clean in half. Sparks flew as it crashed to the floor. He didn't stop to think. He moved on instinct, fighting beside the Guardians like he had trained his whole life for this. Lyra, standing near the sphere, closed her eyes. Her body glowed again, the symbols on her skin shifting and moving faster. "The code is reacting," she whispered. "It's waking something ancient. What do you mean?" Ethan shouted over the chaos. She looked up, her eyes glowing white. The first creation, the one even the Hunters feared. The entire chamber began to shake. The sphere rose slowly from its pedestal, spinning faster and faster. Streams of light shot from it into the walls, into the ground, even through Lyra herself. She gasped as the energy surged through her body, her hair floating weightlessly around her face. The Hunters paused for a moment, their systems glitching, static flashing across their armor. Their leader growled. "Unknown interference detected." Ethan stared in awe. "Lyra, what are you doing?" She didn't answer. Her voice echoed with power, layered and deep. "I am the last daughter of the Source, and I call upon the Origin." Suddenly, the sphere exploded in a wave of pure energy. It didn't destroy him, it transformed. The light spread outward, forming a massive figure in the center of the chamber. Taller than any Guardian or Hunter, its body was made of golden energy and shifting code. Its eyes burned like twin stars. The Hunters froze, their movements halting. The leader stepped forward, its voice shaking slightly. "Impossible." The Origin was destroyed. The massive figure looked down, its voice resonating through the ground itself. "No, I was sleeping, waiting for her return." Lyra fell to her knees, trembling from the energy drain. Ethan rushed to her side. "Lyra, talk to me." She smiled weakly. "It heard me. It knows what must be done." The Origin raised its hand and the Hunters began to disintegrate, their bodies turning into streams of blue light that vanished into the air. The leader screamed in defiance, "We will not be erased again." It charged forward, firing every weapon it had. But the blasts vanished harmlessly against the Origin's golden form. "You were made from me," the giant said. "And to me you return." With one motion, the Origin absorbed the leader's light and the chamber went completely silent. The remaining drones and ships in the sky stopped moving, their lights dimming one by one. The war machine that had consumed entire galaxies was gone, erased from existence. Ethan looked around, his heart pounding. "It's over," he whispered. But Lyra was barely conscious. Her glow was fading fast. Her skin, once bright with living symbols, now looked almost human. "No," she said softly. "Not yet." Ethan held her as she tried to speak. "You did it, Lyra," he said. "You saved us," she smiled faintly. "The Origin saved us." "I only called it." The Origin turned its gaze toward them. "Her code is spent," it said. "She will not survive the transition." Ethan shook his head. "There has to be something. Can't you help her?" The giant's voice was calm, sorrowful. "She is the last of her kind. Her light must fade, so life may continue." Tears filled Ethan's eyes. "She doesn't deserve that." Lyra touched his hand weakly. "Don't cry for me," she whispered. "My world is gone. But yours still breathes, protected, Ethan." He held her close. "I will. I promise." Her body began to dissolve into light, tiny motes drifting upward toward the Origin. She looked at him one last time. "You showed me something no machine ever could. Kindness." And then she was gone. The light faded. The chamber quiet again. The Origin looked down at Ethan, its voice like a final echo. "She is part of the stars now, and through her, your world will live." With that, the massive being vanished into the light, and the underground chamber began to crumble. Ethan climbed out through the broken ground as dawn began to rise. The rain had stopped. The air smelled clean. He looked up at the sky, where faint streaks of light, Lyra's essence drifted across the clouds. For a long moment he said nothing, then whispered softly, "Thank you." And as the sun broke over the horizon, Ethan knew the world had changed forever. The hunters were gone, but somewhere in the light of the morning sky, a piece of her still remained, watching, guarding, and remembering forever.